Hi, and welcome to this episode of Home Care Today, 21st Century Consulting. Our podcast is rolling along, and I am your host, Kate Rose. I'm here today with a special guest, Doug Walters, who's a CPA with Walters & Associates. Doug is going to share some insights with us about his own personal experience in the field, as well as his CPA background and the business that he has here. But we want you all to know that the podcasting that we do is for you. We want this to be a service to you to help you understand, to succeed, to get the tips and the insights that are necessary to be successful, not just in the field of home health care, but also just in life in general. So we chat about what it means to be successful, what it means to struggle with challenges in the industry, and how we can be a small part and player in hopefully giving you a leg up or a little bit of assistance to help you navigate things that might not be as easy as you wish they were. So let me introduce you to our guest today, Doug Walters, CPA and working across the street with Walters & Associates. Doug, welcome to the podcast. Glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Doug, I got to ask, how in the world did you end up as a CPA?
Well, it goes way back. I cut my teeth in healthcare. My father was a nursing home administrator. He actually founded a number of nursing homes, some cottages for the mentally retarded, and just a healthcare institution in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And everyone wanted to get a hold of him. He was a CEO.
Yeah.
So I remember as a young kid, I would work with him and go there in the summers, and I always noticed that when everyone wanted to take his call, of course he was very selective of who he talked to. But when that CPA called, he took that call.
He took the call.
He took the call.
Yeah.
So I thought, this is an important guy.
Okay.
I want to be that guy. So I just took a course in high school, got an award for it, and I thought, this is something I could do. So I became a CPA.
Now, when you were younger and you were working in and around the industry through your father's career, were you drawn to the actual workings of home health care?
Sort of.
Did it resonate with you in some way?
It did. It's interesting. When I became a CPA, my first job out of college was a CPA working for a boutique accounting firm, and they had a post-acute care clientele. And so they had nursing homes, home health and assisted living facilities, as well as hospices. And so that kind of resonated with me because of my father's business. So that kind of got me into the industry, and that's when I started my career.
When you realized that that was the path that you were going to take, did you find immediate reconnection to the healthcare industry as a CPA, or was that something that developed later on in your career?
I think it developed as my career blossomed. I started to learn the home health inner workings working through that CPA firm. And, one of the things that I ended up doing was I would talk to my clients on an annual basis about getting into home health, getting into hospice. We had a rehab provider client who I would meet with every year, and I would say, listen, I think home health would make sense for you to get into. And he would say, I'm not really sure about home health. I don't know much about it. And I said, well, I think you can really do well. You've got doctor referral relationships, and I think if you can parlay them from an outpatient rehab setting into a home health setting, I think you can really maximize what you're trying to do. And so I would meet with him every year, and by the fourth year of meeting with him, he finally said, Doug, I think you're right. He said, if you become my partner, I'll do it with you.
So that's how you actually stepped into it.
That's how I stepped into home health.
And how long ago was that?
That
roughly?
was in 2004.
Okay.
Yep, so we had that for about a decade. I divested it in 2014.
Okay.
So we launched a company by the name of Home Care Pinellas, which is still in existence today. It was purchased by a local long-term care group that had a captive patient audience, so they were able to use what we built over that decade and grow it from there. So that gave me the operational experience to help our clients today, and really gave me an insight into how this business works.
As you're describing this, I'm struck by the fact that it's a unique combination.
It is.
Because you're able to serve others through your CPA work, but with a perspective that you're very familiar with the industry and some of the pitfalls and challenges that other people probably aren't aware of and wouldn't be able to speak to in a client, relationship. I would imagine.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it gave me the operational experience, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so no matter where a provider is in their plight, whether they're just starting off, whether they're about to acquire a home health, whether they're about to start from scratch, I've been there, and on both fronts. We actually launched another company in a nearby community where we actually purchased it, and then we ultimately sold it. So, I've been through the ringer, so to speak. So all the mistakes that you can make, I've made.
You've made.
I've learned.
You've
yeah,
made.
for sure.
So passing that experience along, I'm sure, can be very, very helpful. So speaking about that connection that you have, what would you say to someone who is looking to start a home care agency, or perhaps they've already started and they're still relatively young, but what would you say to them would be a handful of the challenges you can think of that they would face, that you could say, you know what, if you think of this first, you might be able to avoid that pitfall or that problem? What would be a common handful of problems that you think might be something that people would experience and would benefit from having a CPA speak into that for them?
Sure. So, our CPA practice today serves over 1,000 home health companies across the country, so we see it all. And I think when we talk about some of the struggles, I look at my clientele and I think, a lot of it is financial. When you're starting off, especially as a new agency, it's exciting to start a new business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all get excited about it. We want to get the nicest office and we want to get the best people, and of course that all makes sense. But the regulatory requirements to get licensed, depending on the state, can be lengthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can burn through a lot of cash in that time. And so I think being as conservative as possible with your cash in the beginning stages is very, very important.
Can you give me an example of where being conservative might actually play out?
Yeah, I think, when we started our agency, for example, we had a requirement, in different states have different requirements, but our requirement was you had to have a full-time director of nursing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really necessarily, I'm sorry, didn't have to be full-time, but you had to have a director of nursing on your application, someone that was going to oversee patient care. And so, I've seen clients go out and hire a full-time director of nursing on day one. And the problem with that is that the director of nursing is bored. There's nothing to do. There's no patients yet until you get licensed, right? And then the problem for the provider is that it's very expensive. And so we were able to find a qualified director of nursing that would be someone that we can utilize for this part-time position for a fraction of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And with the understanding that at some point, when this agency gets up and running, we'd be able to hire them full-time and give them something, right?
Right.
So I think just working out deals like that in the beginning stages, just with an eye on, hey, I've got to conserve as much cash as possible, is very key.
Is there a temptation to overextend in the beginning of starting a business like this in order to get the things or have the features that a person might think were absolutely necessary when in fact they're not? So overextending through credit and then being underwater, so to speak, fairly early on in the growth process. Do you see that very often?
I do. Yeah, I see companies that just, like I said, get the nicest office, get the full staffing that they possibly can initially, and they've got a 6 month to a year process ahead of them, where it doesn't make much sense. So I think just getting those people on a part-time basis, doing as much work as you possibly can. Do you need a full-time administrative person in the office, or can you answer the phones yourself? Well, they're not ringing much anyway, right?
Right.
Those kinds of things.
Right. So exercising a little bit of common sense and self-control might go a long way.
That's exactly right.
Right. So tell me about some of the financial safeguards. Once an agency is up and running, and let's say it's got some traction now, what about some of the financial safeguards for these agencies that they would need to have in place moving forward? For example, dealing with possible compliance or regulatory issues down the road, or is there some way that they can defend themselves early on so that if things happen later on, they're in a better position to answer them financially?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot there, right? So I think one of the things that's important is when an agency starts getting patients, and it's very exciting. That's what pays the bills. That's what's starting to bring the revenue in. And so it's very easy to just focus on marketing, focus on getting those new patients. But we also have to focus on the patient charts, right? Because if we're not doing a very good job of documentation, that can come back to bite us hard. And so if we get a subsequent audit down the road, let's say, for example, the face-to-face form wasn't signed by the physician, then that chart could be pulled back.
Mm-hmm.
And we can be in for some disastrous results financially in the future if we don't keep an eye on all of that stuff. So really setting up those processes in the beginning, making sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed from a compliance perspective. And then beyond that, I would say that it's important to have some sort of a financial cash reserve.
Because say more about that. I think that's really important for people to understand.
Sure, yeah. So what we're talking about here is, and I've talked to clients and people ask, well, how much cash do I need? And some clients will say, listen, I think it makes sense to have 2 payrolls in the bank. Some clients will say I need one month of expenses. Because the temptation is once we start making money, let's pull it out of the company. Let's start living large, right? And that's what a lot of young companies do. And then if you have an issue where you have something happens with billing and you get behind, and all of a sudden now you can't make payroll, that's a terrible situation to be in. So you want to have that cash position in reserve so that you can go over those as waterfalls happen. You can kind of get through it.
I don't know, but is there a formula that someone could learn or study, a model? Or is it really that they need to make sure that they have a CPA that has experience with young businesses getting started so that they are prepared to get off on the right foot, so to speak?
Yeah, I think having a CPA is obviously, that sounds self-serving, but it's true. I think having someone that's looking at their financial statements, and we do it daily. We're looking at our clients every single day. So, a lot of CPAs will look at your financials on a monthly basis, where we're doing it in real time. And so by doing it in real time, and if you've got the skill set in your office to do it, I would say go ahead and do it. If you've got a bookkeeper that can keep up on your books, make sure you know the numbers, because if you don't know the numbers, you can't operate your business. And so you've got to understand where you are financially and what your needs may be moving forward. Because if you don't understand your financial numbers, you're not going to know where you need to be.
So managing cash flow effectively is crucial.
Crucial. Yeah.
And it's never not crucial. Even when it feels like things are going well, you still have to really be on top of things, and not just for the moment, but also anticipating what may be coming down the line.
That's exactly right. I've had very successful clients that have had hiccups over the years that went from really being cash plush to being negative quickly. Because of some issue that happened in their company. A lot of it's not anticipated. You can get an audit overnight. We're in a competitive business, and so when a provider starts doing well, the competition doesn't get happy, and so all of a sudden now there's a report made. This person over here may not be doing things right, and all of a sudden there's an investigation, and it just slows things down. Even if it's not founded, those things can happen. Even if I've had clients say, well, I don't do anything wrong, there's no way this can happen to me. It can happen to anybody, especially in a highly regulated industry such as home health and any post-acute care.
What about political trends or regulatory trends? Is it important for people to sort of keep their ears to the ground and listen for the hoofbeats in the distance? What would be your thoughts on how a person can stay informed and, staying one step ahead of the need for change?
Sure. So any provider can Google MedPAC, MEDPAC. MedPAC, if you Google MedPAC Home Health and the year, there'll be a report that will come out, and you can download the report. And basically, that's a group that recommends home health reimbursement changes to Congress. So they have the data based on Medicare cost reports that have been filed, and they tell you, okay, this is what it's truly costing home health agencies to operate. And from that, they'll recommend payment increases or payment decreases to Congress for reimbursement rates. And years of late, they've all been negative, right? They think that home health companies are overpaid and should be reduced in their reimbursement rates. The problem, or the fallacy that's there, is that the Medicare cost report is not the best source of data for their analysis.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that on the Medicare cost report, there's certain costs that are disallowed. Marketing being an example of that.
Okay.
If you have marketing people, you're paying on marketing, the theory there is that the government's not going to reimburse you to market, right? And so you disallow that cost on the cost report.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a true expense of a business, right? So the true cost of the business is now being discounted on the Medicare cost reports. So the cost is higher than what's being reported, but we're where we are. It is what it is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, when you make that realization, it could be not too late in terms of a fatal perspective, but the damage is done, and now you need to go back and do damage control.
Right. And so reading those MedPAC reports are helpful. You know what Congress is hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and where the reimbursement rates are going. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that, once an agency gets to a certain size, I think it's 60 patients, they have to do these Medicare CAP reports, which are these surveys that they have to send out to clients. If they don't, if they're below that threshold, they have to file what's called, it's like I forget the terminology, but it's basically saying you're below it, you don't have to do it, right? It's a excusal from that requirement. If you don't do that, Medicare will suspend your payments by 2%. So you'll get paid, but you'll be 2% less. A lot of clients will say, well, 2% is not that big of a deal. It's 2% of revenues, not profit. That can be very
Be a big deal.
Can be a big deal. And the other thing is, for many states where you have to submit the OASIS to the state, if you don't submit those timely, there's another 2% reduction. So sometimes we'll get a new client and they're not even aware that they're getting cut by 4% of their revenues because they failed to meet these requirements. So understanding the requirements is key.
And I would imagine that that's one of the things that as a CPA you stay on top of for your clients.
We do, for sure.
And having the personal experience that you have, I would think that you're also able to cast a wider net of having resources and helpful information to keep them sort of on a steady course. I just can't think of any time that's more vulnerable than when a company is just getting started. And yet at the same time, these challenges that you're talking about, they can pop up at any point in the company's history.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
yeah, one of the things that we do to kind of help our clients is as we meet with them to review their financial statements and really make sure they understand the financial data, we do these strategy meetings where we're talking to them about anything. They have challenges, that's a great time for them to bring that up to us. And we're hopefully helping them get over those issues.
well, Doug, in the last couple minutes that we have, so many of the people that are watching this obviously don't live right here in the neighborhood where they could come in and chat with you if they were looking for a good CPA. What advice could you give someone who is looking for a competent, experienced CPA? What would be your advice to them to give them some criteria to navigate their search?
Sure. So I would ask any CPA firm, how many clients they have that are similar to me, right? How many home health clients do you serve, for example? That's critical because that tells you whether that CPA really understands that industry. And if you have a CPA that doesn't understand the industry, they're not going to know some of the nuances that you're faced with. Mm-hmm. So I think that's critical.
Do you have any long distance clients? Do you serve people with technology being what it is today? We can pretty much transcend the globe.
That was the gift of COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Everyone understands
it
that.
Kind of kicked us in that direction, didn't it?
For sure. So I'm in Florida. We have a national client base. So in fact, before this meeting, I was on a Zoom call with someone in California. So,
a client?
A client.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we have clients in every state, and the nice thing about a federal program is it's everywhere, right? So Medicare is the same in Florida as it is in California, as it is in Texas, Ohio, you name it. And so we do specialty state reports as well in just about every state. So I don't think there's a state that we're not in. I'd have to go back and look, but I think we're in every state now.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, last question. What would you do if you were helping somebody to get started today, knowing what you know? How would you get them in the best position possible financially to pull the trigger and say, let's get this business going?
Well, I think they need to hire a professional to get them started, right? And obviously, we have a partnership with 21st Century. We've been friends for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. Having that expertise behind you is going to cut the corner, right? It's going to save a lot of time, a lot of effort. So I think that's probably the number one thing I would do is hire experienced people, whether it's 21st Century, where it's Walters & Associates, whether it's someone else, but find someone that's in the industry that knows what they're doing, because it's going to save a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, when you speak the same language, it can save a lot of time and energy, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well,
I've
thank
learned
you.
a lot. As most of our viewers know, this is not my field personally, but I've grown into understanding just through the great guests that we have on our podcast. Thank you for being here. And Doug, thanks again. You're welcome anytime.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.